Well, in addition to, I volunteer as the director of UPCI Widows Ministry. I mentioned that earlier, but my boss, Brother Rick Lovell, is the director of the stewardship group, and he likes to say my real job is the administrator of United Pentecostal Foundation, which is housed within the stewardship group. And I used to work for the Division of Publications. It's so funny when you say never, God laughs. I said I'd never work at headquarters. I didn't want to work with those Pharisees. And people backslide after they work there. You know, you hear these stories of some people that leave and are not happy. In 2014, a friend of mine offered me a job, and I said, no, I don't want to work. And my husband said, I feel like you're supposed to do that. And I'm like, I don't want to work. And he said, no, I really feel like you should do it at least short term. And so I went to work for headquarters thinking I'd be there maybe 18 months or so. And here we are. I just passed, in October, had been 11 years. And I now work for the foundation, which is something I never thought I would do either. But after Tom passed away, I had put my own estate in order and thought I would retire when my Brother Robin Johnston, who's the editor-in-chief, he was my boss. When he retired, I thought I would quit. And I went on a long trip, and when I got back, I realized I'm probably not going to want to quit when he is done. And so a friend of mine said, what do you think you'd want to do? And I said, well, you know what? I kind of like what stewardship does. I like the vision of what they do. And she goes to church with my now boss, Rick Lovell, and she told him one night, she said, you're not going to believe this, but when Brother Johnston retires, Kelly's going to want to work for you. So he reached out to the stewardship founder, Brother Stephen Drury, and Brother Drury said to my boss, Brother Rick, he said, get her now. Whatever it takes, get her now. And so the conversation started, and here I am in a role I never thought I would be in, but I'm really enjoying it. It's very much outside my comfort zone. It's very different from what I've ever done in the past. But what's crazy is I had already set up my own estate, and I am now working and helping people do what I had already done when Tom passed away. It's just funny how God orchestrates those things. But before I get into the slideshow, I want to start with a thing that I had come across earlier this year, and it's just got me thinking about what if the UPCI had done this. So the year was 1856. Southern Baptists convened in Greenville, South Carolina for their Southern Convention, and it's like their general conference. And a minister stood up and he expressed the need for starting a seminary. And before the convention was dismissed, the Southern Baptists had collectively pledged $100,000 to support this theological school. And not all the money had come in 6 years later when the Civil War started in 1861. And y'all know what history says about that when the dust cleared 4 years later and you've got dead bodies piled up everywhere. The seminary faced extreme financial circumstances, and they realized that they couldn't just rely on pledges. They needed to establish an endowment. So the Southern Baptist Convention established an endowment. Over the next several years, they relocated from South Carolina to Kentucky to a more politically stable environment. South Carolina was where Civil War started. Things were still a little rocky there. Kentucky was a little bit more neutral. Things went well. By 1899, they hired a new president for the school. He really starts promoting the vision of what this endowment is and what it will do for the theological seminary. And by around 1910, so he took over in 1899, the first decade of his presidency, that endowment was at $1.8 million. And in today's money, that's about $48.2 million. So just to give you a perspective of the magnitude of that. Money kept pouring in to the point that by about around 1921 or 1925, they said, we need to do something to better facilitate this money. And so the Southern Baptist Convention started a thing called the Cooperative Program, and it allowed churches and individuals to support not only the seminary, but you could support local, state, national, and international missions and ministries within the Southern Baptist Convention. Now, I'm not here to talk about the Southern Baptist Convention today. I just want to give a little bit of history on that. We're going to fast forward, though, now, about 100 years later. I started looking, I was just curious, what has happened with those investments since then? So in 1925, it was at 1.8. In 2007, 2008, I found some data for the seminary alone. We're not talking about the convention itself, we're talking about just the school. In 07-08 fiscal year, the school alone had endowments and investment reserves of $78 million. That's just the school. And you think, well, if they had that much, then what would the convention have? Surely it was decreased because it sounds like everything was going to the school. Well, that is not the case. In the fiscal year 21-22 for the Southern Baptist Convention, they had a budget. This is not their assets and reserves. This is their spending budget of $190 million for allocations to go to missions and ministries within the Southern Baptist Convention. That is the investment earnings on the assets and the endowments. And you think, well, man, they must be growing gangbusters, right? Well, actually not. 15 years prior to the 21-22 fiscal year, Southern Baptist had had some rocky times. Some of y'all have probably heard of Beth Moore. She caused some pretty big ripples in Southern Baptist Convention. A lot of the Baptist ministers don't think women should preach, and she really rose in popularity. There were people leaving because they felt like Southern Baptist was becoming too liberal. So in the 15 years leading up to this 21-22 fiscal year, they lost 2 million constituents. So think of the offerings and tithes and donations that would take with them. Even closer to the 21-22 fiscal year, the year before that, in 2021, they lost 400,000 of those constituents in 1 year. And yet, because of the power of the endowments and the stability of their investments, they were able to still spend $190 million for missions and ministries. This is the power of kingdom giving, of kingdom investing when we do kingdom living. I'm going to put that on hold for a minute. We're going to start into the topic today, giving beyond, and actually leaving a legacy that reflects your faith. It's important that your legacy reflects your values and your passions, not only your faith in Jesus. And I speak uniquely, as y'all know, from my perspective as a widow. I mentioned earlier I wanted to die in those early days, but I remember sitting down with my financial planner and saying, but I want to honor Tom's memory well. I didn't care if anybody knew my name or not. I just wanted people to know who Tom Middleton was. And so as I started looking at my estate, and I'm I think a pretty good planner and pretty organized, but I found things in my own estate that were left hanging. I found an investment that man of mine had made before we even got married, had just left it, forgot about it. It still had the old address from the house that he lived in before we got married. His dad died in 1997. 22 years later, Tom dies, and that investment still had his dad as the beneficiary on it. So there were little things like that as I got to digging through our own estate that needed, loose ends, if you will, that needed to be tied up. And so as I started doing that, one of the first things I did to honor him is I set up an endowment. I took $25,000, and a Bible school student for the rest of time until the rapture is going to get an annual scholarship, and they're going to get a bio about Tom. They're going to find out who he was, what he did. And what's really cool is I also get a bio on them, and I find out what the student is doing, what they're learning about, what their focus is. That's kind of cool as well. And so that was one thing that I did to honor him. And then as we went through my estate, we also realized that I had some things off. God had really blessed some investments, and we needed to balance the portfolio, so they were wanting me to sell off some stock. it was going to cost me a whole lot of capital gains tax to do that. And I said, well, is there another way? Can I save taxes? I don't need the money right now. And my guy said, have you ever heard of a donor advised fund? And I said, well, I've heard it. I don't really know what it is. Well, long story short, I set up a donor advised fund. I donated the stock, put it in a donor advised fund, did not have to pay taxes on it. And what's really cool is I still get to tell how to spend that. So it goes to all of my tithing, all of my offerings, all of my charitable giving comes out of my donor advised fund. It was a tax-free way, and for the rest of my days, I will not write checks out of my checking account. If I need money to give to charity, I will sell off stock, I will donate stock, tax-free, all of this inflated stock that has gone gangbusters, I will give it away to the charity, and it will be a tax-free donation. That is kingdom giving, and that is kingdom living. And so I ask you today, if before the sun set and you passed away, what would your estate say about your passions and your values and your relationship with God? That's really something to think about. Sometimes we like to give God other things, and sometimes we don't really look at the overall picture of what end of life looks like and what to do with what He has put into our hands. Let's look at some biblical foundations of legacy giving. What does the scripture say about it? Well, the first thing, I hope y'all can read that. Can y'all see that? Okay. Psalm 21, or 24:1 says, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Bottom line, He owns it all. I'm a steward of what He puts into my hands. How am I handling what He has put into my hands? It's important that our goals and our plans align with God's purpose. The second thing I want to mention is it's a legacy of faith. Proverbs 13:22 says, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. I would also ask you, what is the real inheritance? Is it just money? Is it also faith and values? Intentional planning can ensure that your impact can continue beyond lifetime, and that's not just financial, but you can sow into the kingdom to make sure that faith and values are secured for the next generation too. The third thing I want to mention is giving is an act of worship. My parents raised me that offering was just as important as praise and worship. Giving is an act of worship. 2 Corinthians 9:7, God loves a cheerful giver. Even in our final moments, our final gifts should honor God and support ministries that align with our faith. So I've got some questions I want you to consider. When you think of legacy, what does that mean to you? Can you think of a time somebody else's generosity into your ministry or into your church impacted God's work? And then how could generosity in your own estate continue that impact for the kingdom long after you're gone? Why does estate planning matter? Well, the first thing I want to mention is 67% of everybody has no plans. That is staggering, folks. When you look at the transfer of wealth that's happening in this generation, and 67% have no plan for it, many people delay estate planning thinking they have time, or they believe that their estate is too small. But without a plan, even a modest estate can get caught up in legal complexities and probate. Probate is a minimum of 3%. Most of it's edging more towards 10%. Even if you had, let's say you had a mobile home and a modest car and a bank account. Say you're worth $100,000. We'll just use that. You want $10,000 of that going to probate? Or would you rather that $10,000, if your estate is set up correctly, that $10,000 could bless an endowment, could bless global missions, could bless the local church? A goal without a plan is just a wish. We all say, well, I want to do this. I want to help this. I want to do that. If we don't make a plan, it's just a very costly wish. And the time to do this is now. You don't wait till you're on hospice to do this. You don't wait till the tragedy comes before you do this. You do it now when you're in your right mind, thinking clearly, and can make this plan. And you say, we were talking about estate. What exactly is an estate? Well, let's look at that. It's all of this stuff. It's your home, it's your savings, it's your retirement funds. It's all your personal possessions. Who's got a garage full of junk you've been needing to get rid of for a while? It's everything hidden in the attic. It's in the basement. It's all the things. That is your estate that your kids get to deal with one of these days. Bless their hearts. Let's look at ways that we can start preparing our estate properly. There is power in beneficiary designations. And you're saying, well, what is that? Well, anything that is an asset that has a title to it, or your retirement accounts allow for beneficiary designations. The beauty of a beneficiary designation, it bypasses probate. That is such a beautiful thing. It saves your time, it saves money, it saves stress on the family. So any of your retirement accounts, your insurance policies, your investment accounts, those 401k plans, all of those things, bank accounts, be sure they're set up with a transfer on death. Some people put their kids on them up front. That's fine if you want to do that, but you can also set it. They have no power until you pass away, and at time of death, then they have access to that. Car titles, make sure your car titles are set up so they don't have to go through probate. And then real estate. In most states, you can do a beneficiary deed, and your real estate can even bypass probate if you have your beneficiary deeds in place. One of the key things about all of this is be sure you have a comprehensive list of everything that you own, all of your accounts, all your assets, and make sure that the person that is going to be your executive or your administrator of your estate knows where to find them. I am dealing with a situation right now. It's a man that I met last year and didn't know him until his attorney reached out to me and said, hey, there's a guy that wants to leave his estate to the foundation, and I don't want to go into detail for privacy reasons, but anyway, got it all set up. He wanted me to be the executor. He said, would you do that? I said, absolutely. I have no dog in this fight, so I'm a neutral party in all of it. He passed away a couple of weeks ago. And it's amazing what death and money do to people. And there were people in his circle that tried to hack into accounts. We've had issues. Thank goodness I was able to immediately get a hold of the bank as the executor, show them the will and the trust, and they freeze the accounts. And so right now we're waiting for a death certificate. That's how new this has been. But we were able to freeze the assets and protect them, all because I had a list from last year that said, these are the bank accounts, this is the 401k, these are the investments that he has, and here's the will showing that I'm the executor, and I am telling you, freeze all of this right now. No one has access to this. It's so important that that's in one comprehensive list. And I would also go further, because I did not have this. If there are passwords that you have on accounts, be sure those passwords are recorded somewhere. I did not have those. We had to get a little creative, but we got there finally. But be sure you have a list of all of your assets, and they know how to get access to them. These are some essential planning documents for your estate. I mentioned beneficiary deeds a while ago. That's going to allow that real estate to transfer directly to an heir, avoiding probate. You need a will. Your will is your voice when your voice is no longer here. That will speaks for you when you're in the ground. Ensure those assets are distributed according to your wishes in that will. If you are a guardian of children, you state in that will who you want to be the guardians for those children. All of those things need to be spelled out in your will. There's also a durable power of attorney that's very important. That is for someone to handle your finances if you become incapacitated. So if you fell over right now and went into a coma for 6 weeks, is there anybody, do you have a durable power of attorney set up that somebody could handle your expenses? Can somebody pay your bills? Can someone pick up your checkbook and take care of your affairs? And then say 6 weeks from now, you pop back out and you're doing great. Then that power of attorney is null and void at that point. It's only when you are incapacitated. Be sure you have that in place, because if they don't have access to that and that has to go through probate, then that's another whole mess, and you've got stuff piling up that could easily be fixed here with a durable power of attorney. Also, have a living will. A living will is also called a healthcare power of attorney. Make sure somebody that you trust knows the medical decisions that you want made. So if you have a horrible wreck and you're in the emergency room, be sure somebody can pull that living will up and go, okay, they don't want to be put on a ventilator, and they don't want a feeding tube, and they don't want to live by machines. Or if you do, oh yeah, they want to be put on a vent. Make those decisions, put that in a living will, and be sure that somebody that you trust can make those decisions for you. I took it out of my family's hands. I have a doctor friend of mine and a nurse friend of mine, and they will work together. If something happens to me, I've got it that they will consult together and they will make the decisions for me. But I've also stipulated, don't put me on machines, don't do all this stuff to me. Let me go to heaven. That'd be great. I would love that. Thank you. But be sure that you have a living will in place, because if you don't, I have friends that have pulled plugs on family members, and they've been like, I wonder if that's really what they wanted. Be sure that your decisions are made before you get to that point. It takes a lot of pressure off of the family. These documents also, they protect your dignity. Beyond just honoring your wishes, they protect your dignity, and they remove burdens, undue burdens from your loved ones. Trust. So we've talked about wills. Let's talk about trust. I have a trust. I don't consider myself ultra wealthy. A lot of people think you got to be mega wealthy to have a trust. No, you don't. They are typically for a more complex estate. However, my estate is not complex, but I have a trust because I wanted control, I wanted privacy, and I wanted flexibility. Unlike a will, a trust can manage your assets in your lifetime and beyond. So I see my trust. I have a box on the screen, where the screen is. I have a box up there. I see my trust as a box. Everything that I own, everything God has entrusted to me, I put in the box. It's titled in the name of the trust. If you go online and look for my financial information, it looks like I really have nothing, because everything is protected and private in that trust. I do that. I did that even more so after Tom died. Number one, I don't want to be preyed upon. As a widow, I don't want somebody trying to take advantage of me. So whether I've got $10 in that trust or I've got $50 million in that trust, it's nobody else's business. And that is the beauty of a trust. Whatever I put in that in my lifetime, if I sell that, I can take it out of there. Nobody knows what I have. And that is for a reason. There is such privacy and protection in that. Benefits of a trust: it avoids probate. Everything in there, nothing goes to probate. You can control the distribution of the assets in there. So if you passed away and you had, say, a $5 million estate, you've got 3 kids, do you really want to dump $1.5 million on a 21 or a 22-year-old? Probably not. The beauty of a trust is you can put the narrative in that trust that says when they turn 25, they're going to get X amount of dollars, or they're going to get X amount now for education. And then when they get married, they're going to get X amount. You can measure out your distributions in your trust over time, and it keeps the money, it keeps control of the money. It helps it be managed better until the heirs, if you will, if you want them to get it, it measures it out over time until they can handle it. You can also provide for minors. Some grandparents are raising grandchildren now. It can help you set up their lifetime. So if you're raising an 8-year-old, you can say when they graduate from high school, I'm going to release $100,000 for education. And you can even put stipulations on that. You can even say their GPA has to be a certain point. I mean, there's some people that really get specific with that. But you can say when they turn 16, I'm going to give $30,000 to buy a vehicle. You can measure all of that out if you are raising minors. You can provide for them all the way through life. An irrevocable trust throughout life allows for modifications while you're living. As soon as you drop dead, it's irrevocable. Nothing can be changed. The estate that I'm dealing with right now, thank goodness that's the case, because we have family members saying, well, he wanted this and he wanted that, and yet we're standing here with a will and a trust going. There's nothing in here that says that. There's nothing in here that says that. And so be sure all of your stuff is spelled out clearly in your will and in your trust. It makes sure that your wishes are truly fulfilled. The situation that we are dealing with now with the estate, his goal was to see apostolic education preserved and advanced. We have challenges with the family that there are addictions, I'll put it that way. And it was so important to him that his legacy be preserved. And as I'm speaking through this now, I'm just thinking of the thing that we're dealing with. How beautiful that he had this established, because if it was not established this way, all of this would have gone to family and the money would be gone so quickly. I cannot stress the importance of what I'm saying today, because I'm dealing with a situation right now with that. And what's going to be really cool is in a couple months, when everything is done, we're going to get to print God Comes. And every year they're going to get a nice payout, and it's going to help their teachers. It's going to help supply. There's so many things that he has set up, all because of he was intentional with his legacy. So what are some ways that we can give beyond this lifetime? Well, you can put bequests and wills. You can designate a percentage or a certain amount. I always, on this one, say do a percentage. And the reason I say that is we had a situation a while back. We had an estate that was several $100,000. In the will, it stated that X amount of dollars, like $50,000, was go to a certain ministry. The estate, his medical bills diminished the estate quite a bit before he passed away. And so the estate ended up being like $100,000. The will says $50,000 is going to go to this certain ministry. The family only ended up getting half of the estate. I encourage people to do it by percentage, because he would have probably, if he would have thought it through a little bit more, thought, you know what, let's do 10% of the estate. The family would get 90%, so the family would have gotten $90,000 in that point. The church would have still gotten $10,000. He was in his mind at the time thinking, well, $500,000 estate, 10% of that's $50,000. That's why I say I encourage people not to put a dollar amount, but to put a percentage, because you never know how that's going to fluctuate. And a lot of times medical needs do diminish estates at the end of life. So I do encourage you to do percentages there, not specific amounts. We mentioned beneficiary designations a while ago. Be sure those retirement accounts, life insurance, and investments, if you want any of that to go to the church or to the foundation, you can put them as beneficiaries on there. So the gentleman I'm dealing with, his 401k account already, I've talked to them. It says United Pentecostal Foundation as the beneficiary. But what's really cool is I have his will over here also stating, when that money comes in from that, this is how I want it spelled out. So you can put the details of it in your will, but then you put the beneficiary designation on the account or on the policy. The next thing is a charitable gift annuity. And I know some of y'all at this point are probably on overload. This is stuff you're not used to. Just hang with me. If you've got questions, I'm there. I will be here after this session is over too. But charitable gift annuities and trust. A charitable gift annuity is an irrevocable gift. You get an upfront tax deduction, but then we pay you back over time until you pass away. And so the rate is based on your date of birth. I will say this, the older you are, the higher the payout, because they expect you to die sooner. Brother Drury always had a statement that said, if you get a charitable gift annuity, you're going to live forever. And there is kind of truth to that, because it seems like ours live a long time. I think us apostolics have longevity, it looks like. We had a lady last year had $1 million of charitable gift annuities, and it only paid out a third because we had paid her back 65% of what she had put into it. So she had gotten a major tax deduction, and yet through her lifetime had been paid back. So it's a really cool thing that pays usually better than any investment account or checking account. And then donor advised funds, I mentioned those earlier. I love my donor advised fund. If you have inflated stock or inflated investments, you can fund a donor advised fund with that. Save the capital gains tax on that. You don't have to spend that money over a certain amount of time. So I established my donor advised fund in 2021, and I'm still spending money out of it. And then when I get it down to a certain point, I'll donate some more stock, fill it in. I never give out of my checking account. Everything comes out of my investments. Kingdom giving can be so creative and can save you a lot of taxes if you know how to do it. Also, consult with the right advisors. If you don't have a tax advisor or a financial advisor, I encourage you to get one. Go to a Christian one. It doesn't have to be apostolic. I'll be honest, my certified financial planner is not apostolic, but he is a Christian, and he has helped me tremendously with how I want to give to the kingdom, and he has helped me so strategically. I chose not to go to apostolic because living in St. Louis, I pretty much know everybody, and I wanted to keep things private. I'm a very private person, and so it was important to me to stay private. But go to a financial advisor that is Christian, because if you go to someone that's an atheist, they don't understand kingdom giving. A lot of them think churches are ripoffs. And so I would be very careful with choosing that, but be sure that you have a financial planner. And so my questions on this are, have you started your estate planning process? Do you even have a plan in place? What ministries or causes have impacted your life the most that you might want to benefit in the future? And what questions do you have about the different giving options? And write those down if you have questions. I will be available for you to answer. Here in a minute, my contact information is going to pop up. I can do a Zoom call with you, discuss some of this stuff. I'm working right now with I'll just say a high leader among the UPCI that reached out to me after I had a presentation at conference and said, I need to deal with this. Can you help me? And I said, sure. And I'm helping someone that I honestly am shocked they didn't have a plan. But they said, can you give it to me in little steps? Absolutely. So we've started with a step. We got 3 steps going right now. When they get those done, then we'll work on the next ones. It doesn't have to be this massive, overwhelming thing. Have you heard the saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do you do an estate plan? One step at a time. That's how you do it. So let's look at the eternal impact of legacy. One of the things I encourage people to do, I talked about your will being a voice for you when you're no longer here. I also encourage people to write a testimony of faith. And this came after helping someone a couple years ago with their estate plan, and their children are backslidden. Their children are well-to-do in their own right. They educated their kids. The kids are actually doing better financially than the mom and dad did. And the mom and dad said, we want to leave our estate to the kingdom. They've given the kids some things in the home. They've made it clear to the kids, and the kids are fine with this. They said, mom and dad educated us, and we've done, far better than they have. So the kids are on board with this, but the mom and dad said the hardest thing for us is they're backsliders. They wrote a personal statement of faith in their will. And when things are handed out after their death, these kids are going to have to read aloud this testament of faith. And it talks about why they're in church and the things that God did and what got them to where they are. It encourages those kids and grandkids to reconsider their choices and return to the faith journey that was so precious to the parents. And I encourage people to do that. Leave a testimony of faith in your will. Don't just write that you want somebody to get the dining room table and somebody to get the brooches and somebody to get the lawnmower. Put that testament of faith in there. Also, make sure your planned gifts sustain ministries, churches, and missions. Some of the ways that people have done this, we have an endowment in the foundation that has anybody heard of Home International? It's an orphanage in Guatemala. There's a family that set up an endowment to benefit them, and it's for medical and dental care of those kids. So a lot of times people will send things for curriculum and stuff, but nobody really thinks of, you know what, they need toothbrushes and they need dental care. And this family had been down there and seen the needs and said, you know what, we're gonna establish an endowment, and for the rest of time, the orphanage is gonna have dental needs and just medical needs taken care of. Very creative way to do that. Yeah, that doesn't share Bible studies, but you are taking care of the needs of children. What a noble cause I think that is. The Urshan Family Trust, y'all have heard of N.A. and Jean Urshan. They were our general superintendents. So they had a family trust set up. When they passed away, that trust paid out for a certain amount of time, I think it was 15 years, to their children. At the end of that time, the estate then collapsed, and the remainder went into an endowment. Now, what's really cool is because it was so creatively set up, the children actually got 105% of what they would have gotten initially in the estate. But because it was so well set up and taxes were saved, the kids got 105% of what they would have gotten. There were several $100,000 left. That is in an endowment, and I write checks every year to 4 or 5 ministries that endowment funds, and that's going to be till the end of time. It's a permanent endowment. And what's really cool, we have a certain amount that we pay out, and any earnings over that roll back into the principal amount. So the principal amount keeps growing. Right now we're paying out 4% of the total fund. Any earnings over that, like last year we earned on average almost 8%. So we're paying out 4%, but another 4% is growing this endowment. The bigger this gets, the bigger the payout gets. Endowments are such an amazing tool. I just love them. And then the last thing I want to mention is there is joy in giving. When I sat down with my financial planner after Tom passed away, trying to get all the pieces put together and pulled in and making sure I honored him well, there was grief in that because it was because he died that I was doing that. There was also so much peace and fulfillment in the joy of knowing that my resources that he and I had worked for and God had blessed us with, the building of a business that I've remembered days that miracles happened along the journey, and I looked back at the blessings, and yet now I'm taking that and sowing that back into the kingdom. There's such contentment and fulfillment in that. And long after I'm gone, my legacy, Tom's legacy, is going to keep sowing into the kingdom. And there is no greater joy when I look at my legacy and how I want to be remembered. So I'm asking you, how do you want to be remembered? What is a step that you can take today to begin your plan or update your plan? If you've got one started and maybe you just need to revisit it. And how does your generosity in your estate plan reflect God's love? And if it doesn't, do you want it to? And this is the time to make those changes if you want it to. I like to say, do something today that your future self would thank you for. And I would go further and say, do something today that the future generations, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, would thank you for. And one of the greatest things you can do for them is supporting kingdom ministries, furthering the truth of God. You can hand them money, you can hand them boats. But if the kingdom of God is not supported, what profits a man if he gains the whole world and he loses his soul? It is so important that we maintain the legacy of kingdom. Estate planning is not about preparing for death. It's about preparing for life, and it ensures that those you care for, those that you love are cared for, and that your values are upheld, and that your legacy endures. And whether your estate is simple, The one that I'm talking about, the gentleman that we're working on, his is not a huge estate. It is under $1 million. And some people think, oh my word, why would I ever have a trust if it's under that? Because it can be strategically protected. For a couple $1,000s, you can have everything protected in a trust. And there are probate thresholds. I'm not sure what yours are for your state, but you need to check. Anything in a state over that amount is going to have to go to probate. So be aware of the probate thresholds in your state, and if you're over that, you might really want to consider a trust. Your legacy is more than possessions. So take the step today, not just for yourself, but for those you love. What does your estate say about you? Make sure it says what you want it to. And if it doesn't, there's a QR code there. You can download a will and trust guide. There's my contact information. You can reach out to me. We can have this further discussion. Some people think, well, you're gonna know all my business. I don't want to know the amounts. I don't have to know that. All I need to know is, what accounts do you have? And then I can help direct you with that. The individual I'm dealing with right now on the guy up in UPCI, I don't know numbers at all. I'm just helping him kind of categorize and organize what he needs to do in his estate. I don't need to know all your business. I'm just here to kind of navigate you along. I want to get back to something I mentioned a while ago. So we were talking about the Southern Baptist Convention. So the stewardship group, I mentioned that collaboration program that is their giving arm now. They had so much money coming in. The stewardship group was established by Brother Drury for the UPCI to support the operations of headquarters. A lot of people didn't know that. But the long-term goal for the stewardship group, which is what I work for, is to pay for all of the administrative cost of headquarters. And that would be several $1 million. That would be such a blessing if we ever get there. The initial plan was for the foundation, which I oversee. It was to grow to the extent that would fund most of those expenses. So like the cooperative program of the Southern Baptist Convention, the foundation hopefully will eventually be able to support all of that. Well, what's crazy is when Stewardship Group was established, the loan fund needs overtook the foundation. Matter of fact, have y'all heard of the church loan fund? We have a loan fund within the UPCI. The loan fund is bigger than 700 banks in the United States. We're a pretty big deal. Thank God. All glory to God in this. He has blessed this abundantly. They have over $118 million in assets. They have loaned over 350 loans to churches, and this is to buy property, renovate property, different things like that. We loan this out to our churches. Like I said, we're larger than 700 banks in the United States. This is part of the United Pentecostal Church. This is not something out there. This is who we are. They also, if y'all have any CDs in local banks, you might want to look at the loan fund certificates. Right now, CD rates, I think, are bringing in 4.25% for a year. I think 4% is for 18 months, 36 months. And then there's a Kingdom Impact account, which is kind of like a savings account, or it could be like a debit account. You have to leave the money in for 1 month, but then after that, you can do withdrawals, and it's earning 3.5%. And I don't know many checking accounts right now that are earning 3.5%. So that's another thing that the loan fund is doing that also is housed within the stewardship group. But I want to step back. I did a little dreaming after I looked at the Southern Baptist Convention. If we, as the UPC, had established an endowment of just $50,000 in 1945 when we became an organization, if we had just put in $50,000 and not put anything else in, earned a modest return of about 7.5%, here's what we'd have today. 20 years, there would be, is that $8 million? And 30 years, there would be 17. and we're an 80-year-old organization, so I thought, oh, let's look at 80 years. We would have $700 million. That is the power of compound interest. Those endowments with the Southern Baptist Convention were not established by ultra-wealthy families. They were established by people saying, you know what, I'm going to give a little bit here in my estate. You know what, I made a bonus this year. I'm going to give this. I'm going to give this. It was small amounts given by people like you and I. We sometimes look at these big endowments of Harvard and Stanford and things like that and think, oh my word, there's no way we can do that because we're not a Rockefeller and we're not a Kennedy and we're not. You don't have to be. A lot of these endowments are just funded by individuals that catch the vision and the importance of giving and sustaining those institutions. I want to look at something today. We look at that and think, well, $50,000 back then would have done that. So what would $50,000 be today? In 1945, in today's money, it would be $850,000. 850. You know what? That slide is up for this today. I did that prematurely. These are the numbers. If we funded an $850,000 endowment today, and people say I couldn't do that, that's 850 people giving $1,000. Or that's 1,700 people giving $500. And there's some people that could give $10,000 and not bat an eye. But it's a matter of people coming together collectively and saying, what could we do for the kingdom? If we established an $850,000 endowment today, and if we added only $100,000 a year after that, which would be around $120 a person, or $10 a month after the initial installment, that's the numbers we would have. This is not rocket science. It's not really that difficult. It's a matter of catching vision and everybody doing a little bit. And so when you're putting your estates together, I encourage you to consider leaving to the foundation and designated ministries that you want it to go to. Another thing about leaving to the foundation instead of leaving to a specific church, I say this carefully, we've had huge churches among us leave us. And there were people that left things in their estate specifically to churches that walked away from truth. And those people's money went to charismatic movement things. If they had given to the foundation, the beauty of the foundation is we support 100% UPCI ministries. You have to line up with the doctrine. You have to stay within the UPCI. If people walk away from that, our bylaws state, our board, the foundation board, sits down and says, what other ministry aligns most with what this donor would want? And we can redirect those monies back into a truth church, into an apostolic UPCI church, instead of that money going out the door into a movement that would grieve the donor. So that is one of the beautiful things about giving to the foundation. We protect the apostolic doctrine when you give. Another really cool thing about giving to the stewardship group and to the foundation, we have administrative fees and loan origination fees, just like the secular world does. We have to operate. Anything over our expenses is profit, right? So you have your gross receipts, and then you have your expenses and whatever is net profit. We're nonprofit. So last year, actually in June, when the fiscal year was over, we sat down and we said, we have X amount of dollars left over, $700,000. And we as the stewardship group sat down at the table, and we're in headquarters, so we know the needs of the different ministries that are going on. We know churches that maybe had a burn or something, that maybe they need a roof, or this curriculum needs to be translated into Spanish. We get to sit down with hundreds of thousands of dollars profit, and we pour it back into ministry. We don't keep a dime of it. So every loan origination fee that comes in doesn't go to a boat or a vacation home or anything like that, like it does in local banks. It all goes into the kingdom. That is the only reason the stewardship group exists. And so I wanted to give you all a little bit of background on that. Sometimes people say, well, you work for stewardship. What is the foundation? We literally exist to support the United Pentecostal Church. And so when you give to us, you are supporting ministry. You're not supporting us, you're supporting ministry and kingdom. I'm going to put that slide up again if you need my information. I also work closely with Brother Tom Butler. If y'all were here last year, Brother Butler, I sent him last year, and he spoke on our behalf last year. But my boss wanted me to come this year and speak to y'all. So if y'all got any questions, let me know. And if not, reach out to me. I'm available at headquarters, and I'd be glad to hear from y'all. And if anybody's got any questions, let me know. I'm glad to answer anything I can right now. All right, I'm going to hand it back to you.